The Kansas State School for the Blind presents Community of Practice. Let's talk about beginning Braille, tips and tricks across Kansas. April 19th, 2024.
My biggest question is how to get a student to even start Braille who feels it's an embarrassment, or he says he doesn't need it, but he's legally blind and he can't read print. So we're trying this. So what's a good motivation, and how do you even begin? What program do you use? That type of thing.
And Penny, you want to share the age? That's a factor too.
Yeah, he's a beginning first grader.
All right. Any ideas for Penny?
Offer him jokes, uncontracted Braille jokes. That way he can learn some of the letters and he can do something fun with other people. And then as you learn the letters, you add more complex words in those jokes.
To kind of piggyback that, some things that I've done before I had a little boy that was around, he was in second grade, but I allowed him to make a list of like five words that he wanted to learn. So he was a big sports fan. So one of them was like Chiefs or football or some of those. And we started with those words uncontracted as well, to work on learning some of the different letters.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off too and just say if you can find what interests them and then build it around that, I think that's helpful.
I think take the time to build really good rapport also, so that it's a safe place for him to be frustrated or to trust you that even though it's hard, that it might be worthwhile.
I've used games a lot too. And then I think if you blindfold yourself, sometimes that's helpful. Like my kids have always liked that if I couldn't see it either and I had to do it with just accessing the Braille.
And if they're in a classroom learning, use some of the words from the classroom so they hear it with their classmates and see it with their Braille. I've had older ones, and since they wouldn't look at the print Braille, I brought in a digital refreshable Braille, and that was interesting to them. So,
have you done any like educational stuff with their class? So maybe it's less of a like big deal to the other kids in the class. Like if they learn about it and it's less of a novel, like, oh, what's going on over there? Would that maybe like take the stigma away for him to just make it kind of normal?
Well, we did do that yesterday. So I asked permission and I took his best friend with us, and I had his best friend learn a couple of Braille letters, which he thought was so super cool. And it really helped my student understand that nobody's going to make fun of him. And they think that it's a superpower, because that's what I've been calling it, superpower, because he's also learning the cane. And so he was excited about that, and I hope to maybe bring some more of that in later on if the teacher will allow it.
There's a book called The Secret Code that talks about a young Braille reader, and I think I found it on Amazon. It's not in Braille, but it wouldn't be difficult to make in Braille to share with someone.
With reluctant readers, comic books can be a good avenue, but I remember trying to find comic books that were easily brailled, and I never really could. Has anybody had any luck with that?
No, but wasn't there a group that was trying to make it like accessible online or something? Comic books. Who was that group?
That was
out of
from Wichita.
Wichita State had a event at our symposium last year.
What about the electronic Braille writer that has patterns built into it? Or the Poly or any of those electronic Braille, or I even had an app on an iPad that you could play as well.
Madeline and Rough is really good as long as you compare it with refreshable Braille. Depending on how much, if he has no vision, then he'd need a refreshable Braille. But if he had a little bit, that could be done on the screen. It's an iPad app. It's a little girl and her dog, and they learn Braille on an iPad.
Oh, are you saying RUFF, rough?
Yes.
And that's one that also he could do with a friend that is sighted as well, because without the refreshable Braille screen. So that could maybe be something they could do together.
Penny, do you feel better about your question or do you have anything else?
No, I wrote everything down, so this is really good information. I've tried some of this already, so it'll be good though to present other ideas. So far, what's worked best for him is having his best friend in the classroom with me. And so I'm going to ask the teacher to push in just a little bit, maybe 15 minutes of certain class, phonics time, and work with him a little bit on the Braille writer, because that was the big intrigue yesterday, was this typewriter that does what, so yeah, I like some of these suggestions. I will definitely be putting some of them into practice.
Well, and if they both know how to use a Braille writer, they can write sentences to each other or words to each other, and they're practicing their writing and they're practicing their phonics. So, and it's a secret, so nobody else knows what they're talking about.
I met with a teacher earlier and she is new and she sent me a list of questions. So I'm going to hop in with one of those. Her first question is about position, how to ensure proper finger placement on the Braille. She used the paper towel trick from, I think that was Anna and Hillary. Should that be phased out eventually? What are the thumbs and pinky doing? Should elbows be straight? One of the students' elbows always seems to kind of poke out, looks like a chicken wing.
What's the paper towel trick?
So the student, the first time I observed her, she was here doing this. So using one finger on the Braille, the other finger was to the side, the other fingers weren't doing anything at all. So we were talking about placement, and Hillary and Anna gave the idea to use a paper towel roll underneath to get that little curve form going.
I wonder about finding something smaller to put under. If you're working on phasing it out, then there's something there to still remind them the placement, but it's not forcing them to keep their hands in that position.
This morning on Facebook, I think it was like APH or something, I don't know, but someone had taken those stackable like the 10 frame blocks. Do you know what I mean? Those little stackable blocks that you use for like math manipulatives or whatever. They've taken those and Velcroed them to the top of the Brailler key so that their little fingers went in those little cubes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about using a Brailler?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not quite yet. This is just
Okay.
this little one
I
is
was
working
gonna
on using in gold and just working on the tracking right now.
Okay.
There could be a weakness in the fingers and wrist, so do some exercising with them, therapy putty or something. It sounds like they're trying to get that strength to push the key down.
And I've always gone from something big like a paper towel roll to a pencil or a pen, and then phase it out as long as your two pointer fingers are buddied up together. So one reads next to its buddy.
Okay.
And that moves your elbows in, that moves their fingers flat on the paper together.
Okay, thank you. Kaylee, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, I just got a new student that is in kindergarten and she's going to be a dual learner. And I guess I just don't even know how to start. Like I've never taught Braille. So, where do I even start? I got the curriculum and I can't remember what it's called right now.
Building on
But
patterns.
yes, yeah. But I started with like some pre-braille skills and she picked those up really fast. And now I'm like, think it's time to start it, but I don't know how to start it.
Is she in preschool right now?
Kindergarten. She's finishing kindergarten.
Go on,
If she was
Joan.
starting kindergarten, I'd say environmental print. So every time there was something in print in the classroom, if possible, put the Braille underneath it. But if she's headed to first grade, oh goodness, I'd figure out what's going on in the classroom and see if you can piggyback off of that. So if they have letter cards, maybe we Braille the letter cards and have her have a set with her near her seat. So she's looking at the same thing as her class, but she sees it in two ways.
guess this is maybe silly, but like, how do I even like, do I just start with the building on patterns to even just, we've looked at some Braille and read some Braille books, but she doesn't know any letters. Like, I need to teach her like just the letters and like, teach her how to read Braille. But so do I start with the building on patterns? Is that like where you would start with introducing Braille?
Well, can you tell us exactly what you did? You said you did some beginning Braille things. So what exactly was that?
We did a lot of like the texture sortings and stuff, and like the beads. They were all from APH. But we did big, small. I'd have to go to her IEP goal. Big, small, rough, smooth. Like she was able to identify all those things. She did things like blindfolded as well. But she was like, she just kind of flew through all of them. So.
And what we were talking about earlier with Mangold, have you done anything with that yet? So it's a program, I guess, where the students are taught how to read the Braille as far as just playing with the dots. And so that's something that you can order from APH. You'll get a lot of stuff. And I'm going to jump into a question that I heard earlier because it'll probably help you with this if you were to get started with that. And it's about how to make Mangold less repetitive and less boring, if you had any ideas for that. Because once you get it, Kaylee, you'll see that it's lesson after lesson, and you do have to be repetitive, but you're working with littles and you want to make it fun too.
That's where you make up your own materials to work on some of those things. Like if they're interested in, they like candy or something, maybe you have a line of something that they have to track to get to the piece of candy or whatever it is. And that Anna Swenson book, I mean, I always kind of fall back on that for the early readers.
This one?
Yes.
I tried the building on patterns for kinder or for pre-K this year. It was really good. And then it goes right into a repetitive kind of issue with, so it starts them in pre-K learning those letters and some of the words. And then in building on kindergarten, it gives them the dot numbers, it gives them the word, it gives them the sound. So if she's learning it in class, you may not want to do the same thing. You may just want to pick out the pieces on building on patterns that she didn't learn in class.
And what you're basically asking is, what would everybody do starting bare bones first day teaching Braille?
Yes.
So all of our people who have done this before, and even people who are new, what are some things that you would do right off the bat?
Matching games, like with the Braille. So have, the flashcards or whatever, and they're matching them in like a Go Fish game or whatever, however you want to do it. But a lot of matching.
Since they're dual media, they have APH stickers. So when they do a great job on something, they have the Braille and the print word on them. Those have been fun. So they get to see both.
Ellie, you said something like you said first day teaching Braille. Like, I guess like my brain went right to like, have we made sure that she understands that she's going to be learning Braille and why she's going to be learning Braille and what Braille even is?
Yeah, I feel like we've got that part down. Like we walk around the school and we pick out Braille, and we've looked at Braille books, and we've talked about why she's learning Braille, and why her other peers are not using Braille. And she's like very excited. I just have not taught her Braille because I'm like, okay, I don't know where to, like, I don't know what to just pull out day one. So
Melissa, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm working with a couple of really little kids, and a couple of things that they've really enjoyed and has helped a ton is that book called Six Little Dots that helped us get into the dot game, and then the Six Little Dots game from APH. It's matching, well, not really matching, but it's kind of like Go Fish, but it really helped them understand the dot numbers. They're doing really, really well with it. And it's also helped them become more interested in the Braille dots and what they mean and what they're doing. And then we are doing the building on patterns, but we're also working a lot with their names. So starting with something that everybody's learning in pre-K and kindergarten, which is learning to Braille their names. And they don't really have the finger strength to do a lot of that. So we're not focusing a ton of time on that, but just learning. We did start with the 6 little dots, along with the building on patterns. And another thing, I think someone's already mentioned this, is we're using building on patterns, but we're not using it like a curriculum like you would in a classroom. So I'm picking and choosing the activities that go along with where they're at and where their interest is, but just using the program as a guide.
Okay. No, I like I've seen the 6 little dots, and that's kind of what I was like. I feel like I'm a really black and white thinker, so I'm like, how do I just show up on day one with, the building on patterns curriculum? And I wanted something more to like intro it a little bit more, but I think I'll do that, the 6 little dots, and then bring in the building on patterns. So, okay.
Yeah, there's a book, the 6 little dot book, that is a good lead in to that game that APH also has.
Chat, and very similar to what Melissa was saying, that taking those lessons from building on patterns, picking out the pieces that you need, and then filling in with these other pieces. I really like how the pre-K level of building on patterns is laid out and everything is there, and I can pull from that the parts that apply to my student. But it keeps me at least going in a scope and sequence direction without having to create it myself.
And with those, to piggyback off of the 6 little dots, Tony gave me some of the other books, like the one with the lizard and his tail, and the one with the wind that has the string that goes through. I think those those books are really good for tracking and some of that tactile skills as well, and are really intriguing to some of our little ones.
I was just going to ask a question about backing up, and really with those pre-braille skills. My student that I've just started working with this, I'm realizing she really only works with one hand at a time, and I've not yet convinced her to have 2 hands on at the same. I'm not even worried about getting all the fingers on the braille. I just want 2 hands on the braille. So what fun just getting your hand. She's very tactile when she's motivated to do it, but how to transferring that to the things I want her to be tactile with.
I do finger buddies with my little people. Their finger has to have a buddy when he's reading. Otherwise he gets lost. Because I get lost too. So figure they know what getting lost feels like. So I make sure they have one finger out and the other finger has to join up, and they can have my finger as a buddy if they need to start.
So I've worked with several Braille students, but I've never actually taught the Braille. I've always gotten them when they've already known the Braille. And so now I have a 6th grader who has a Braille goal that I got him from another district. And I heard that he hadn't been making a lot of progress. And so I backed up and did more tactile skills. I've only worked with him once so far because he's very new to me, and was working on more basic tactile awareness kind of things because I think he had some gaps there. But then once I get into actual Braille instruction, do you guys recommend just like doing Mangled for someone that old, or other thoughts?
Braille is fundamentals.
I really like Braille fundamentals too for older kids.
Okay.
And that you can get that through Tony.
Thank you.
I like the Braille sentences.
I had that. I think I loaned it to someone.
I've had students who thought Braille fundamentals was really boring, and they preferred Braille 2 as the curriculum, like TOO. And I think that's something that we can get from Tony as well.
I like to use a combination of the Braille 2 and then the Braille sentences.
I think you guys may have already mentioned this, but I'm not sure. I always start with like things like these initially before we even start. This also just for placement. The kiddos really like these as well. I don't know if APH still has these though. Do they? They do?
Mhm.
Okay. Those are all I have in there. And then we do lots of flashcards, lots and lots of flashcards. And we have to make them a lot because they take them home and they're ruined after a week of just practicing.
Do you want to mention what to do with the tops of the flashcards in case someone's new to using flashcards?
Well, I don't have a good example because these are not marked, but just cut the edge off right here so that they're all on the same side. And so they're all facing the same way.
Well, and if you use note cards, like regular note cards, if you put some clear nail polish in the back side where those braille cells have been popped up, this hardens it and it's less likely to get smooshed.
Ooh,
That's cool.
Yeah. I'm not sure where I read that, but it doesn't take much. It's just clear nail polish in the tiny holes that you made with whatever you did to make the braille, and it hardens up and they can't smush them.
Nice. Carity, Anna's asking, you held up a swing cell, the Papa cell, but what was the middle thing you were holding up? Oh, it's out of foam and it has holes in it to use the.
And then we use those. We use this quite a bit, or I use this with one of my older students that learned Braille. And then you just put. Wow, I cannot do this backwards. Sorry.
So it's like a pegboard, but you just use foam to create the braille cell. Got it.
Carity, can you hold those little things up to the side? I don't know what they're called. I remember just finding them in the room.
And I've used these. I don't know where you got these, but I've used these in math before.
Discovery Toys used to have some of them, but I think they come with a lot of math manipulatives now.
This is Erin Meyer. One thing real quick. We used to do morning messages, like the classroom had a morning message where they would work on writing skills or whatever. And then I would carry that over into my beginning Braille lesson. And so it was very scripted, very repetitive, and the same every day. So they could read the Braille before they could read the Braille, and it seemed to help them pick up letters and numbers and things like that.
Well, and Kaylee, something that I shared with the teacher I was talking to earlier, we were talking about how to make Braille more fun. And I think someone mentioned this earlier, and this idea is not mine. It was to really just try to incorporate the student themselves and what they like. And we were working on tracking, and we made up a silly story like you and your mom are going to the beach and you're going to take your cat and your dog and your 2 ducks. But oh no, the duck swam out into the ocean. So we're going to go find it. And so you would have a prepared Braille, and we'll say the duck's name is Ducky. And so you're searching in the waves, and then, oh, here's Ducky. And then you take the waves and go back to the shore. So just silly ways to get them tracking, but it makes it fun and kind of takes their mind off of what they're doing. So does anybody have any fun ideas like that? Just how to make Braille more fun, even though I think we kind of covered that at the beginning with Penny's question. Any other ideas for a beginning teeny tiny?
If you're looking at it in pre-K, Building on Patterns pre-K has a ton of those stories. And each time it introduces a new letter, it introduces a new tracking line with those letters in it. Like we were looking for, one of the stories was about seeds. So one of them had a dot and spaces in between, and you could follow the line and find where the seed was dropped. The next line had seeds in it, and then the next page had them start growing. But the last line didn't have it growing. It was a late bloomer. So it didn't grow until after the rest of them had turned into flowers. But yeah, a lot of those in Building on Patterns are already made for pre-K. And this is the first time I've used Building on Patterns pre-K. It's done really well with the kiddo.
Here's the last question from my teacher. She has a preschooler and she is just learning Braille. How often should she be using the Brailler? Should that be incorporated into our lessons or more on her own until she learns the function of the machine? her fingers are so little, she can't really press multiple buttons at the same time. So now she's just scribbling on the brailler.
If you go by what the regular class is doing, everybody gets a chance to scribble. So anytime they're scribbling on paper, she should have a chance to scribble on the brailler. And then I know it's a struggle right now because my pre-K teacher has the brailler behind on a shelf behind a curtain. So my student doesn't even know where it's at, even though I've gone and picked it up in front of them before. So it needs to be available as often as the other kids are working on that same skill. That way it's not different. This is just what she does when we do this, or this is what he does when we do this.
But that's been one of my favorite things about the pre-K from Building on Patterns is they include name writing right at the beginning. And they have really nice instructions written out for how to load paper in a Braille writer that you're supposed to attach to the Braille writer so that other people in the classroom or whatever can help them do it also when you're not there. And they backward chain the whole process so that they learn to write their name. And it's included in every single lesson. So I don't know if your answer was yes, every lesson, Minley, but that would be my answer.
Yeah, I think anytime and make it a free for all. And I think even letting other kids, which I know we're never supposed to touch the cane, but with the brailler, that way the other kids are getting used to it because they're going to grow up listening to that thing and you don't want them to hate it from the bat, using it responsibly. But I think anytime and every time, especially if the student wants to use it, then for sure.
But it has to be in sight. If it's hidden behind a curtain, the student won't realize that they want to use it. And I've got teachers that are afraid that they're going to break it. If that's the case, I'm just going to bring one of the big gray ones because if you do break that thing, it takes a lot. I think the only big thing we've had is things stuffed in it. So we have to have the conversation. Don't put anything but paper in here.
Kind of going back to my kindergartner that I'm just starting to teach that with. Since it's going to be summer, do you guys have maybe like some suggestions for, out of the things that you talked about, starting, because we only have a month left, and then maybe giving some suggestions for mom to do over the summer because she's not doing ESY. I definitely don't want to start it and then come back and she has nothing. And mom's really awesome, so
I would say you have in your closet some picture books that have Braille included that you could send home so that mom and she could be reading and feeling the Braille and stuff. You could send a Brailler if you maybe do a video to send to mom of how to load the Brailler and how it works and send the instructions like Anna was talking about. Then she could be scribbling and things at home. It doesn't matter if it's not real Braille. It's just getting experience in the muscles to use that machine.
So I am good to like give them stuff, like they can take stuff home from school. Okay.
The Brailler, you would have it checked out to her anyway, because you would tell Tony that it's for her. And then the books are, I don't think they're on your May's inventory anyway, and I made some of them, so you can, if they don't even come back, it's not a big deal.
Okay. They will. I just didn't know if I was allowed to.
Yeah. And if it's a bigger item, I've had parents sign a note saying, I'm aware that this item, if it gets broken, I need to help replace it or fix it so that they're more aware that they're going to keep it safe. But write down which kid has what at home, not just at school.
Okay. Kaylee, do you have access to an embosser?
Yes.
Something, and you are seeing the student right now, correct? You'll see her or whoever it is until the
end.
I
see her. I just got her in October, September, but she has albinism and was never on like an IFSP. This is her first of anything.
Okay.
But I see her twice a week.
Okay. So something that I know my student, when we first started out, was really excited about was creating stories that were all about her, about her dog, about her mom and dad. And just make it silly. Don't put a lot of brain power into it, or even write them together. And then you could braille it out. It could be a book. It could make sure it has the print so mom can read it, as well as doing something really easy like Lucy sat on a mat. Oh no, she sat on her cat. That way you're giving her something that's more of a read aloud with mom. She can still look at the braille. And then you're also giving her something that she might get to where she is sounding those words out.
Okay. Yeah, since she's dual, and she's not had any instruction ever,
Mhm.
I feel like I'm like trying to do typing. We're trying to do figure out how to use the magnifier and the telescope, and I'm like, oh my god, we need to do braille. Like we, but okay. No, that sounds good. I want to get her mom some stuff for the summer. So thank you guys.
And I'm not saying that she's going to be reading that. It's just something
Yes,
that
but like
super accessible, and it's also just getting stuff in her hands.
exposure, yeah.
I don't know. I'm on a mail list from National Braille Press, and they just had an email this week with some really nice ideas. I'm just trying to see if I could open the email somewhere to send it all to you. And their things aren't necessarily free, although, yeah. But anyway, they have some, and one of the things they have is this Just Enough to Know Better book that mom might be interested in. If you have a parent that's really interested in learning more about Braille, that's what this is intended for. So I can forward this email. Don't follow Paths to Literacy. They have great ideas too.
Someone had talked about a book at the beginning. I wrote down The Secret Code. Can you remind me what that was saying? Like that wasn't in Braille, but it was for.
Mhm.
Someone remind me what that was.
It's a book I found on Amazon, and it talks about a person and their friend. One person used Braille, one didn't.
Okay.
And so that person gets introduced to Braille and how they use it together. And then they
Okay,
start
cool.
talking back and forth in it.
Okay.
Like a
That'll
picture
be
book.
Yes.
That'd be good to introduce to then. Okay, thank you.
Depending on the age, I remember when I had a pre-K kiddo, and I know he's in high school now, which is crazy. We took his Matchbox cars and made a parking lot with 6 stalls in it. And so to make the letters, I sent home one of those cards that you get from Envision that has the simple letters on it. And he'd park his cars on the cookie sheet in the stalls to make the letters. So I don't know if it would be cool. I thought about Barbie shoes, like it's a closet. Put her clothes in the spots in the closet that would make the same letter. It was just something really silly because he got tired of saying the dot names. I was like, well, show them to me.
Well, Jenny wanted to share with you all a little bit about music Braille. So go for it, Jenny.
Hey guys. I basically wanted to I just want to get it out to TVIs because like I was realizing, and I probably didn't realize this either until the last couple of years, but we always talk about knowing like uncontracted Braille or the basics of Braille before they learn music Braille. And I realized it just puts our kids so far behind. And when I'm working with a music teacher currently with some elementary kids, and when they're in elementary school, like especially like first, second, third grade, like the kids don't learn a whole code. Like if they were learning alongside their peers learn print music in a way where it's mostly rhythms in those grades, and they don't actually learn like note names. And so a lot of times we wait, but I want everybody to know that if we start our kids in music Braille, like in those younger grades, they keep up with their peers so much better in music. And we know that across the board, but sometimes we get, like, I didn't realize this either. Like sometimes we get caught up in, we have to learn the contracted Braille or uncontracted Braille first, or at least the alphabet before they start learning music Braille, because we think of it as a whole code that they're going to learn. But when they start in like first grade, they're really just learning like maybe 5 characters or 5 symbols like that. Like that's literally it. So like in music classes, they learn rhythm. So it's the same note. They don't differentiate. This is a C, D, E, F, G or whatever. They just are like, this is a quarter note. This is a half note. And so in music braille, all it looks like is like an eighth note would look like the letter D, but we don't even talk about that. We just talk about this is our eighth note, and then we add, and in that level, like in first grade, they really like it's quarter notes. So I didn't even start with an eighth note. So it looks more like it's like a dot 1, 4, 5, 6. So that's all they do, and they do it over and over and over again. And so all we're talking about is this one shape over and over and over again with some spaces to indicate measures. And maybe we'll talk about like, we'll add a dot 5 at the beginning just to add an extra thing to be like, this is the beginning of music. And we might do like a double ending bar just to add something fun and different in it. And that's it. Like they literally do quarter notes over and over again in different patterns. And the great thing about this is that it's not learning a whole code. They're just learning like one thing. And then their music teacher also is able to super easily involve them when they put up rhythms for the other kids, because it's literally one thing that they have to know to put up. And so I just wanted to spread the word, because I know in the past it was always like, oh, well, it's like a whole code, so we have to, wait till they learn the alphabet or wait till they learn Braille. But if we can spread the word that we want our kids to start learning music Braille at first grade, that would be so much easier for the kids, because they aren't having to learn a whole code. They're just learning a shape, and it's the same shape over and over again. And then we might add one dot to that if we're going to do like a whole note. And typically those music classes only do quarter notes, maybe a whole note. And so again, we're learning like 5 things or less the whole year, and just putting it in different patterns. So they're learning the music part of it. So anyway, I'm hoping that makes sense how I'm explaining it. Because I know a lot of TVIs I've talked to are like, oh, well, I don't want them to learn a whole code. Is it too early to start? And I'm like, actually, it works out so much better, because they can participate in their music class. Their teacher can participate in learning the Braille, because all they have to know are these 5 things. And then they can simply some of the TVIs and music teachers I've worked with, the music teacher will learn the Brailler enough to be like, boom, 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 I did a measure for you. Or if they have a para with them, boom, 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 here, you're doing the same thing that's on the board that the other kids are learning. And it's so much easier than once you get older, because then you have to practice it, you have to memorize it. So anyway, anybody have any questions about that or thoughts or anything, so that I can help us start getting those kids, involved earlier? Joan is over there laughing.
Well, thank you, Jenny. We are running short on time, so if you have any questions for Jenny, can you throw them in the chat? And Anna's even saying we could do an intro to music Braille code webinar in the fall. That's a really good idea. Kaylee, I know that it's hard when you ask a question and then someone's like, hey, just read this really fat book and you'll get your answer. So I wanted to tell you, with beginning with Braille, it starts by talking a lot about balanced literacy and why it's important. And it's really good, but it's probably stuff that you already know. So starting chapter 9, beginning reading activities, is where you might want to be. It looks like that's going to be what's going to fit best for you probably next year with your student.
The logo for the Kansas State School for the Blind, a flying blue eagle in the center of a red and yellow sunflower. Fade to black.